All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are tackling one of the most visible and, let's be honest, fiercely criticized institutions in any modern democracy: political parties. Let's dive right into this, because if there is one thing people might actually love doing more than voting, it's complaining about political parties, right? I mean, talk to an ordinary citizen, and they essentially equate the whole concept of democracy with these groups. But just because they're highly visible absolutely does not mean they're popular. Actually, it's pretty much the exact opposite. So that brings us to the million-dollar question. And honestly, it's a fascinating paradox. Do we even need them? We universally blame parties for literally everything that goes wrong in our political lives. We associate them with division, arguing, just constant discord. Yet, when you look around the globe, almost no modern democracy can exist without them. Think about it. A century ago, hardly any countries had political parties. Today, very few don't. So why are they absolutely everywhere? To get to the bottom of this, we've got a quick roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to break this down into 6 steps: the political party paradox, what do parties do, how many parties, India's political landscape, 4 major challenges, and finally, the path to reform. Okay, jumping right in with section 1, the political party paradox. Let's lock down what a party actually is. At its most basic level, a political party is just a group of people who come together to contest elections and hold power in the government. They basically agree on a set of policies they think will promote the collective good. But here is the catch, and it's a big one. Look at the definition of partisan. Because parties are fundamentally about representing a part of society, taking sides is completely hardwired into their DNA. They are naturally partisan. A party is known by which part it stands for, which policies it backs, and whose interests it's protecting. And you can break literally any party down into 3 basic human components, no matter its ideology. You've got the leaders at the top calling the shots. Then you have the active members, the thousands, sometimes millions of workers out there doing the legwork. And finally, you have the followers. These are the loyal voters, and without them, the whole machine just grinds to a total halt. To see why this kind of structure is basically inevitable, there's this absolutely brilliant analogy from our source material about village panchayat elections in India. Even when these local elections are technically non-party and fought by independent candidates, what happens? The village just naturally splits into competing factions, and they each put up a panel of candidates. It's just human nature, right? We form groups to build support. The whole party system is really just that exact same human instinct, scaled up to a national level. All right, moving from theory to practice, let's hit section 2. What do parties do? Like, why are they so necessary on a day-to-day basis? The crucial takeaway here is that they are the absolute engines of representative democracy. They do the heavy lifting across 3 main areas. In the electoral space, they hash out policies and give voters an actual, clear choice. In governance, they are the ones passing the laws and, well, running the country. And in public life, they act as a vital opposition. They shape public opinion, and they give everyday folks a bridge to government welfare schemes. Seriously, imagine a massive country where every single elected official is a total independent. No one could make a unified promise, let alone run a cohesive government. That is exactly why we need them. Which brings us to section 3, how many parties? Let's take a look at how different countries handle this. Globally speaking, we're basically looking at 3 models. First, a one-party system, like in China. Now, since that doesn't permit free competition for power, it's not really considered a democratic option. Then you have a 2-party system. Think the US or the UK, where power generally just bounces back and forth between 2 main heavyweights. And finally, the multi-party system, like in India, where a bunch of parties actually have a solid shot at power, which often leads to coalition governments. And this highlights a really cool point from the source. A country doesn't just order its party system off a menu. It evolves over decades, heavily shaped by the nation's specific geography and social diversity. Let's zoom in on that multi-party setup in section 4, India's political landscape. This is how it plays out in one of the most diverse nations on Earth. Get this. The sheer scale of India's democracy is mind-blowing. There are over 750 political parties officially registered with the Election Commission of India. 750. Now, obviously, not all of those are serious contenders to run the national government, but it really goes to show the incredible, vibrant breadth of political organizing happening every single day across the country. To kind of cut through the noise, the Election Commission has really strict criteria for what gets to be called a national party. As of 2023, there are 6 of these recognized national parties, and they cover a huge ideological spectrum. You have the INC, which has been rooted in centrist secular politics all the way since 1885. Then there's the BJP, founded in 1980, centering on Hindutva and building a modern India. You also have parties built on very distinct socioeconomic movements, like the BSP for Bahujan Samaj empowerment, the CPIM focused on Marxism-Leninism, the NPP zeroing in on the Northeast, and then newer players like the AAP focusing on anti-corruption and good governance. It is a perfect snapshot of just how much ideological variety is out there. But honestly, the national parties? That's only half the story. Over the last 30 years or so, we've seen a massive surge in the power of state or regional parties. Because for a long stretch between 1996 and 2014, no single national party could get a majority on its own. So they were literally forced to form alliances with these state parties. And you know what? This has actually made Parliament way more diverse. It's actively strengthened federalism and democracy because suddenly regional voices became absolutely essential to running the national government.
But hey, it's not all sunshine and roses. Let's hit Section 5, 4 major challenges. If you've ever felt completely cynical about politics, well, this section is going to validate that. All over the world, people are super frustrated with how political parties behave, and our source lays out 4 very distinct, systemic flaws that act as massive roadblocks to a healthy democracy. Let's break them down. The first 2 are super connected. First up, there's a serious lack of internal democracy. Parties hardly ever hold internal elections or organizational meetings, so power just funnels straight up to 1 or 2 people at the top. And that leads directly into challenge number 2, dynastic succession. Since everything is handled behind closed doors, the people at the top have a totally unfair advantage. They can easily hand power to their loyalists, or worse, their own family members, completely locking out the ordinary, hard-working members from ever getting a real shot at leadership. Challenge number 3 is the classic one, the growing role of money and muscle power. Because winning is literally the only goal, parties take massive shortcuts. They'll nominate candidates purely because they can raise huge funds, which gives wealthy donors and massive corporations way too much influence over actual government policy. And finally, challenge 4, voters often just don't have a meaningful choice. Worldwide, the actual ideological differences between major parties are shrinking, especially on the economy. Sometimes if you want a genuinely different policy, the option simply isn't even on the ballot. All right, so how do we fix it? That's Section 6, the path to reform. Can these massive institutions actually change? We have seen some legal steps taken. A huge one in India was the constitutional amendment to stop defection. That's when an elected representative suddenly switches parties after they win, usually because they were offered a huge pile of cash or a sweet ministerial job. Now the law says if an MP or MLA jumps ship, they lose their seat. And hey, it worked. It stopped the cash grabs, but it accidentally created a whole new problem. It essentially outlawed internal dissent. Now representatives basically have to just nod and accept whatever the party bosses say, no questions asked. So when you look at the big picture of reform, there is this massive gap between what's actually been done and what's just been, suggested. The Supreme Court and the Election Commission have forced parties to file criminal affidavits, hold organizational elections, and submit tax returns. That's good. But parties are completely ignoring the bigger systemic fixes, like passing laws to strictly regulate internal party affairs, legally guaranteeing a 1/3 quota for women candidates, or providing state funding for elections to cut out that corporate money we talked about. But here is the absolute most important takeaway from all of this. The law has limits. Overregulation can actually backfire because, let's face it, political parties are really good at finding new ways to cheat the system. Plus, logically, party leaders are never going to willingly pass laws that destroy their own power. True reform cannot just be handed down from the top. It takes actual public pressure. Through the media, through petitions, through protesting. If parties feel like they're going to lose votes by ignoring reform, trust me, they will change. Which leads us to this incredibly powerful final thought from the source text. The problem of bad politics can be solved by more and better politics. It is so incredibly easy to just sit on the sidelines and talk about how broken the machinery of democracy is. But the system only works if we actually engage with it. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. The machinery of democracy is in your hands now. So are you just going to keep complaining about the game, or are you ready to step onto the field and actually change how it's played?